subscribe and please hit like. I got a special request to talk about amplitude. Somebody said, JD, how do you get so much amplitude out of your repairs? Well, not by accident. But before I'm going to talk about amplitude, I got to give a shout out to an individual. I think the gentleman who runs Watch Repair Tutorials, look up Watch Repair Tutorials. He is a watch expert. I don't claim to be a watch expert. I'm an amateur. I'd say I'm a hobbyist watchmaker. I've been doing it for quite a few years now. He has a complete tutorial about chasing amplitude and getting amplitude, but I'll have a chat about it for now, just to satisfy people out there that are subscribing to my channel. So first of all, I've got myself a Hamilton pocket watch here. This is one of my pocket watches, and this is very beautiful. Hamilton is a railroad grade pocket watch. It's actually lever set. Let's see if I can open this up here. It's a lever set pocket watch, and I apologize if I'm not looking at the camera because I'm looking at the screen here. But lever set meaning I've got a lever up here. I pull that up like that and engages the setting mechanisms, and then I push it down again. And that is how you deal with a lever set. These are railroad grade watches, and this particular watch is in a very nice salesman's case. I've got to figure out how to close this thing before I ruin the threading. So there we go, closed. So that's in a salesman's case. Salesman's case looks like this, and as I said before, it's a Hamilton. It's a 21 jewel pocket watch. See if I can get a good focus on this thing. I've got it in one of my nice cameras, autofocus, but not my best camera. So double roller. They're fun to work with when you got to change balance staffs. You can look up the serial number if you want. There's the serial number, and you can look it up and tell me what you think. Where is that serial number? It ran away on me here. It's right there. There's the serial number for the pocket watch. Right there. 2347227. Adjusted to 5 positions. So this is a high-end or very high-quality watch. So you'd expect this watch to be able to get very good amplitude. So what is an amplitude of the watch? So I look at the swing of the watch as it goes in one direction, swings counterclockwise and then counterclockwise. I gotta look down here for a second. So swings one way, and then the pallet fork pushes it the other way, pushes the impulse jewel all the way around until it stops, and then pushes it all the way around until it stops. Now when I videotape in slow motion, I call that the swing of the watch, not the amplitude. The amplitude is that divided by 2. So it's you take that and you divide it by 2, and that's the actual amplitude of the watch. So that's what your time grapher is measuring. It's not measuring the swing as it goes all the way around, stops, and then goes all the way around again. That's basically the swing of the watch through a full motion. Half of that is amplitude. So I like to get at least 220 degrees for really old watches. I'm very happy if I get something above that, like 250. For newer watches, you should be shooting for 270, 280 degrees of amplitude. So, and you double that, and that's the swing. And if I recall, you can get about 520 degrees before your impulse jewel hits the back end of the horn of your pallet fork, and that's called overbanking. That's the correct term for overbanking. You can go look up those degrees. I'm not looking it up. I'm tired. I've been on travel, and I just decided to pop in and make this quick talk. So amplitude is all about power and friction. So your power from your pocket watch is coming from your mainspring. So the first thing you have to do is make sure you've got the right strength of mainspring, and that means it is what was specified in the spec for this particular pocket watch. There are catalogs you can get that will tell you what the spec is for that, and you have to have the right length of mainspring. Then you have to have the right width of it, which would be the strength of the mainspring, if I'll say fatness of that mainspring. How wide is that thing? And then it's going to be the depth of the barrel. It's going to be just slightly thinner than the depth of that barrel from the cap of the barrel to the other side of the barrel. So that's those three things, and the type of material that's actually used in the mainspring. The old mainsprings, steel mainsprings, they're made differently now. They have non-magnetic mainsprings. Maybe they hold their strength a bit better. The old ones would hold their strength, but occasionally would get set. And when I say they're set, the mainspring would come out and it would look like it's already, it's sort of go into a Porky Pig right away when you forget what to say. So it's set, which means the cinnamon swirl kind of look of the mainspring is tight, and it's actually smaller than the width of the movement itself. Someone told me that if it's larger than the width of the movement, then it's you can still reuse the mainspring. Maybe, I don't know. They still have quite a lot of strength even if they're that size. But if the diameter is less than the diameter of the movement, then that mainspring is likely set, and you got to go get another mainspring. I go to cousinsuk.com to pick up my mainsprings, right? Because you can order a non. It's not a Waltham mainspring. It's not a Hamilton mainspring. It's just a mainspring that they sell there. So it's not. It's new old stock. I think it's new stock. So it's newness. So the mainspring has to be strong. Has to be put in position. So you're checking to make sure the mainspring is strong. Then you're checking to make sure that barrel is sitting in the right place within that watch. So if you look at the barrel sideways and there's something wrong with the holes that are part of the pivots on the actual barrel, so the center arbor is going through a hole and that arbor is widened, the hole is widened where the arbor goes through a bit, that barrel can tip sideways. That tipping of the barrel sideways would cause friction, and that's additional friction to what already would be caused by the actual arbor itself. So you have to make sure the barrel is fit into the plates properly, and that is not happening. And if it is happening, then you have to fix the plate. You've got no choice, because it will not run properly, and the strength will not go from the spring to the ratchet wheel on the top that you're looking at here, and then to the first wheel, or this is the second wheel actually, because you got to count. You count your wheels starting at the mainspring. So that's 1, that's 2, which is the center wheel. In this case, I've got there's a gold setting here for this, likely 9-karat gold, and with a jewel. So these are higher end. Sometimes you'll get a jeweled barrel, and the jeweled barrel will actually reduce the amount of friction as well. So now you've got less friction, which equals more power of the mainspring getting its power to the teeth here, which are actually contacting the pinion of the center wheel and passing that power along. So that's what you want. You want a very strong mainspring, and you want that to go forward to the center wheel. So now for all of your wheels, you want to make sure the upper and lower pivots and the jewels are clean. So when I repair a watch, and they're not angled in any way, they're going, I'll say, straight up and down. They're absolutely vertical within the plates, and you can't see any discernible angle. So the jewel is flat to the pivot. So I actually check and make sure my pivots are nice and clean. I check them under a microscope after they're washed, and then you can peg them out. Sometimes I find that they're so clean as there's no real reason to peg them out. I may leave leftover pithwood in there, but I typically will peg them out anyway, especially the smaller ones. And you can start the pegging with the larger holes and then work your way to the smaller holes, because the actual wood that you use for pegging it out, it's not pithwood. I made a mistake. It's another type of wood that I'll remember in 5 seconds. Okay, grab this stick. It's pegwood. You dummy. That's what you use for pegging a hole out, is peg wood. Get it? It's like Al Bundy. Hey, peg. That's my Al Bundy impression. So Al Bundy, I don't think, fixes pocket watch. Hey, pig. So you peg these holes out to make sure they're clean as heck, right? And then you go through all of these right till you get to the final one here, and you make sure they're all pegged out, all clean, and that's going to reduce any friction from the pivots on these wheels going through. And I'll just consider the balance to be a wheel as well at this time. Now the other thing is that you have to make sure your pinion leaves are clean. So all of the watches have pinion leaves. Let me see if I can see. Can I grab something here that'll show you what that is? I think I can. I'm going to make this one big ass continuous video here. I'm grabbing from my pile of junk here. Now you see those pinion leaves right there? That thing that looks like little tiny steps is called a pinion. If you don't know that, you shouldn't be watching this channel. Those are the leaves of the pinion. Those pinion leaves are interacting with the actual teeth on the gear. The teeth are on the outside of this gear. The pinion is that small pinion on the inside. And if those pinion leaves have anything in them at all, it's going to slow down or even stop the pocket watch or the watch. So they have to be cleaned. So after you clean the watch, check to make sure there's nothing in there in the pinion leaves. Check each leaf, because I've had watches stop at a specific position because there was a problem with the pinion leaf. If the pinion leaves are not in good condition, then the power will not be transferred from the mainspring to the wheels, and the problem will progressively run from the mainspring to the center wheel, to the intermediate wheel, to the fourth wheel, and on. So that's the pinion leaf. So you have to make sure those pinion leaves are clean. So the teeth, when I fix a pocket watch, I'll take the teeth that are part of the wheel. Let's see if I can do this. It's always a fun time trying to, and I haven't flattened this out properly, but I'll roll them on Rodico like this just to make sure they're clean, and I'll have a glove on when I'm doing that, so I'm just doing it with my fingers right now. But I'll roll these on Rodico just in case there's something left over from the cleaning, because there can be something from your cleaning fluid that gets in there. And I'll make sure I roll these, and I'll make sure that I take a piece of pith wood, and let me grab a piece of pith wood here. Reaching over here. I got my Sean Connery beard right now. Miss Montepenny. I pulls out a gun, I pull out a cannon. So you take your pith wood here, and you stab the pivots with the end of the pith wood. So you stab them there, you stab them there. It's part of the cleaning process, and that gets rid of any residual oil or anything that might be on there that's residual. So, and you roll the actual teeth here with a clean piece. This is like a dirty piece. So, and stretching this out and folding it over might help you a bit, but it's still going to be a dirty piece. so you roll it on this to make sure that that's clean, and now you've got no problem with respect to the interface between the gears and the pinions, the wheels and the teeth and the pinions. So once you've done that, this is a center wheel for something. I'm not sure what it's for, but I'll put that back. Then you've got to go through to the escapement, and you have the escape wheel, and the escape wheel's got little tiny feet on it. They look like feet anyway. Maybe they're not feet. Maybe they're just shoes. And those little feet interact with the jewels that are part of the balance of the pallet fork. So the pallet fork has to be spanky clean. The jewels have to be set in the right position, and those feet have to interact with the jewels of that pallet fork. And if they don't interact properly, if there's undue friction, because the jewels in a pallet fork are being slid away, I'll say, by the feet. That's how it actually works. You can read about how that mechanism works, but they're being kind of slid, like pushed, and one will lock and then the other one will unlock, and that's how it works. So that has to be absolutely clean. And then when I'm doing repair work on pocket watches specifically, I put a bit of Mobius, this is starting to fade, but Mobius 9415, and this 9415 is kind of a gel, consistency of a gel. And I put it right on, if I remember, I put it right on the pallet fork jewels, and right on the end part, the flat end part of the pallet fork jewels. And that has given me some pretty incredible amplitude, especially on really old pocket watches I've worked on, because that definitely removes the friction. And when it touches this stuff, and then the pallet fork pushes the actual, or sorry, the escapement wheel pushes the pallet fork jewel, and then it slides it over, which gives it more power. So I put this stuff on there. There's probably better technical terms to actually explain this. I am sorry, because I am tired. I drove 8 hours, and then I did something, and I drove 8 more hours to come back. So I'm a little bit pooped today. So I use this, the 9415. I highly recommend it, and I apply that to the pallet fork, both jewels, before I complete the repair. So that helps with some of the friction for amplitude. Now, if you have any faults in the pocket watch, like For example, the hairspring, once you've put the actual balance in place, the hairspring is touching somewhere, or it's coned, it's not properly sitting in place, you will lose amplitude. I always look underneath the balance cock here, and sometimes you have a situation where the hairspring is just touching the underside of the balance cock, and you really can't see it because it's on the underside. So you got to really search for that, because that could be your problem. If you're able to run the watch, which you should do, run the complete train without the pallet fork in, and see if it moves freely with one wind. Just give it one quick wind and see if the whole thing moves freely. If it's moving freely and nicely, with as little discernible friction as you can tell, and you can usually tell when the actual escapement, the escape wheel, slows down nicely. It doesn't jitter and stop and then start again, then stop and then start as it's slowing down. It just goes nicely to a stop. That means the power is being distributed through this whole chain of wheels very nicely, right? So my chain was sideways there. I should go up like this, down, and trying to draw on a camera. That's why I'm hiding my eyes, see? So so you want to make sure that's working first before you do assemble the pallet fork, and make sure that's in well. And then the pallet fork has to do its job pushing the impulse jewel. If I go in from the impulse jewel, I've had a lot of situations over the years where the impulse jewel in fact was loose and I couldn't really tell. Just a little tiny bit loose. If that happens, you're losing a ton of power with a loose impulse jewel. So check to make sure that impulse jewel is firm. You can just grab it with your tweezers ever so slightly and then try to move it a little bit, and holding the actual balance lightly, extremely lightly, because you don't want to crack the jewel for sure, but you do want to make sure it's in place. You can also tap up on it, and if it comes up and out, then it's not shellacked in place, and you can re-shellac it. So the impulse jewel has to be in there well. The actual mouth of the pallet fork, the horns that's accepting the jewel, needs to be clean. So you're cleaning that pallet fork so it's to spec. And if you have a dart in there that's actually used, a safety dart that's used for with the roller, and you've got it not in the right position. I've had that happen in one of my videos. I kind of explained that, I think. I had the dart was sticking out too far, and it was actually hitting the roller table. It wasn't going into the recess in the roller table and then coming back out again, so it wasn't working properly. So that has to be perfect for a functioning watch. And if it's touching the roller table, like scraping against the roller table as this is turning around, then you're going to lose amplitude. And then I think about 5 watches ago, I had a situation where I had to bend that safety, I'll call it the safety dart, whatever. It's probably another name for it, but I don't tell myself the names of the watch parts as I'm working on them usually. Only when I'm talking to you folks. So anyway, that dart needs to be in the perfect position to interact with the roller table, or it gets scraping on the roller table. And like I said before, then the hairspring again, if it's magnetized, you need to demagnetize it. If there's oil on it, which I had in the past, a little tiny bit of oil on the hairspring that's almost impossible to see, that oil will cause the leaves of the hairspring to stick together. Sometimes it's not discernible either. Sometimes the hairspring, when it's pulsating, the leaves stick together, then they unstick, and then they stick together, and they unstick, and it's really hard to see that. So you make sure that hairspring's absolutely clean. I clean the hairspring by putting it into lighter fluid. I think lighter fluid gets rid of any of the grease. I've had some amazing results using lighter fluid. Make sure you wear a mask to protect yourself. Don't breathe in lighter fluid. That's not good. It's not. Don't try this at home. Isn't that what they say? So don't try that at home. So make sure that the hairspring is operating perfectly and nothing is loose. Even the stud for the hairspring needs to be in place properly, and the collet for the hairspring needs to be in place and not loose and in the right place. So bead error is important, but not as important as you'd think about for amplitude. So if you've got a bead error less than 1, then that means at rest your pallet fork is sitting dead center at rest. You can look down for a second here. Your pallet fork, which would be right here, is sitting dead at rest, and your pallet fork is in between the banking pins on both sides. And that's kind of a 0 bead error, the perfect bead error. Now, there are, if you do the math on it, the hairspring is not going to compress and then uncompress, expand exactly to the same degree every time, right? It's a hairspring. So getting a beat error of just under 1 is probably pretty good. I try to get it to 0.5 or less if I'm lucky, but playing with that hairspring collet many times is very difficult to get that beat error perfect. So a beat error is important, but it affects amplitude if it's way off, but really it's not a big amplitude killer, not as big as you'd think it is. The other thing is when you're timing a watch, if the watch timing, if you have the regulator over here is way over to fast or way over to slow, then there's something wrong. You could have the weights, the screws on the balance, the mean time screws or temperature screws or something are screwed out. They're not right. I had a watch a while back that somebody put all kinds of these balance screw weights on there, right? The compensating weights you use to actually poise a balance. So if the balance is out of poise and you have a problem with it being out of poise, but there's weights on there that shouldn't be there or whatever, and it's actually the hairspring is adjusted as too fast or too slow, then you've got a problem. So if it's too fast, that means you've got the actual, this right over here, right where these pins are, the regulator pins, they're riding away from the stud, which is in fact shortening your hairspring considerably. You can lose a lot of amplitude by shortening your hairspring, and you're only shortening it to make it run faster, and you're only making it run faster because perhaps there's something wrong with the screws on the balance. So make sure you've poised the balance properly. There's nothing wrong with that, and that this isn't the center. So this actual this stick here I'm pointing at, the regulator arm here for this, should be as close to center as possible to have a good I'll say the balance is in balance. So your hairspring is in balance. So the other part of this is that to make sure when you put this watch back together that the hairspring collet at rest would be sitting dead center to the balance cock upper jewel if you looked at it. So it wouldn't be off to the side displaced at all, because that would mean the amount of spacing between the coils of the hairspring on one side is a lot different than the spacing between the coils of the hairspring on the other side. So you got to make sure your hairspring is not out of whack that way. So, and I think I've made videos on that years ago as well. So that balance being in absolute perfect condition allows you to get all of the power from the mainspring here all the way up through the watch. The other thing that can cause problems with your watch, believe it or not, are the hands. So you have to make sure your hands are put on properly and they're free. Obviously this watch only has one hand. You know why? Because the darn thing moved. I think I moved it earlier. So the hands need to be in good position, and the setting mechanisms for the hands need to be working appropriately, and the friction of the watch turning around, because when the center wheel turns, it actually turns the minute wheel, it turns other wheels in there. So that has to all be working perfectly, or that'll slow down your watch as well. So there we go, 10 after 10, perfect time. So let me wind this watch, close that down here, put that on. This is one giant unedited video. So, and this is for somebody who asked, can you tell me about how you get such good amplitude? Oh, by the way, if my amplitude is really poor on a watch I'm servicing, I go back and I diagnose the problem step by step. If I can't get the right amplitude, there's got to be something wrong. If it's not the mainspring, I go through all the wheels to make sure I haven't missed anything. I make sure there's no dirt anywhere in there. So it's a little tougher if you've got a low jeweled pocket watch, because you get a lot of friction between the plates and the pivots. If the watches are fully jeweled, a 21 jewel watch, you shouldn't have that friction. So if I wind this watch, this is no wind on it at all. It should start. There we go. So that's watch is starting now. And I believe this watch has pretty darn good amplitude, if I recall. You're probably not going to be able to see it on camera, but I think this is a very high amplitude watch. So I think it's, I've got my Indiana Jones in the Temple of Doom hat on right now. I hate snakes. So I wound this up. I'm still winding it. For me, 20 times like that usually winds the watch. So now it's at the very end of its wind, and you can probably see that there's some incredible amplitude happening here, right? So this is pretty darn good from an amplitude perspective. If I put this in the time graph where I could see how good or bad this is, I won't bother doing it because it's a waste of time, because I want to really talk about amplitude. So if you're if you're trying to regulate a watch, you better be getting more than 220 amplitude, or it's going to be very difficult to regulate in different positions. And if you've done everything I've said and the watch is running very well, then you should be able to regulate it in 5 positions. So, and the watch is normally held like this, or it's held like this. Those are the 2 positions that are the most important, that are running extremely well, and the other ones are important, but not as. So that's pretty much what I do to chase amplitude on a pocket watch. I just make sure everything is clean as heck, and it is serviced well, and the balance is balanced. So that's it for now. You can comment on that and add more if you want on how to make sure you're getting the best amplitude from your pocket watch. Please add some more comments on this, and let me know if you enjoyed this talk. And I'm not sure if I've forgotten anything. The only other thing, I guess, is the mainspring barrel. On the inside, the older mainsprings used to put some oil on the older mainsprings to lubricate it so that the spring itself isn't causing friction against the barrel itself as it unwinds its power. So I usually lubricate these old mainsprings. I put a line of lubrication on 4 sides when the cap is off the barrel, and that helps with that. And you have to make sure that the arbor for the mainspring barrel also has some lubrication where it touches the barrel cap and the barrel itself. So make sure you apply the proper types of lubrications to the watch to make sure you get the least amount of friction possible. And I use, as I've told you, I won't do a discussion on oiling right now, but the thicker the oil, you're placing that thicker oil on where there's more friction, so you're getting a lot thicker in oil here as you move down the train towards the escapement and the balance here, and you're using a much thinner oil like a 9010, for example, on the balance. So that's it. Use good quality oil, high quality oil. Don't cheap out on anything, and make sure you clean the watch and oiled it properly, and make sure there's nothing mechanically incorrect. The teeth are all good. You don't have a bent tooth. You don't have, the leaves are clean, as I said earlier, and you'll get a nicely functioning watch, and you'll likely get very good amplitude. So good luck. Please submit your questions to me on amplitude. And also, I really recommend, and I'm going to look them up again and see, the gentleman who runs the site for watch repair, he does an amazing job. Why is this not showing now? I just saw it 2 seconds ago. Hold on a second. I'm looking at my iPhone here. Why do they call it an iPhone? Because I use it, that's why. See, watch. If I type watch repair tutorials, tutorials, Tutorial, capital something, then I get this gentleman here, and I'm going to show you on camera, and he's a good guy. There's who he is, and I got some other crap on the phone here, but there's the guy there, Watch Repair Tutorials. So join that website. He's got professional watchmaking videos on there. I think he's a smarter guy than I am, reference watchmaking anyway. He knows what he's talking about. He's got excellent professional videos on how to repair watches. Pay attention to them and go to his channel, please. And please like and subscribe to my channel too. I'll have more repairs coming up where I show all my good and bad things in repairing watches. So thanks a lot, JD again. Thanks for subscribing, and thanks for enjoying my channel. And I'll call it Miss Montypenny. I'll have 2 cups of coffee and some sugar and make it 3 cubes.